We will begin our regular meeting for Tuesday, September the 17th, 2013. We are glad you're here. We have a very busy schedule for tonight. We have 2 presentations, 4 public hearings, 18 consent items, 2 decisions, and we'll have a need for closed session. And so I don't forget, I made a note real early. We are pleased to announce to you before we do the invocation that our Madam Clerk celebrates a birthday next week, and we won't be here. So how about a round of applause for her birthday? Number two on the agenda is invocation, and Chaplain Ken Day will lead us in that.
Let us pray. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, we are honored to hear at this public meeting. We come together as a people to do the people's business and our leaders to make decisions for our community. Lord, we pray first of all for our President and our Congress people, that they can get along and do the people's business. Your prophet Isaiah said to us, "Come, let us reason together." Our prayer is that they can reason together to do the people's business in trying times. We also pray for our governor and our legislators, that they too can do the people's business, keeping in mind there are many different beliefs in North Carolina, different religious faiths, and different ideas and persuasions. But yet we ask them to remember the prophet once again, "Come, let us reason together and make decisions for our community and our state and our nation." And lastly, Lord, here in Burke County, thank you for a beautiful place to live, a prosperous community. Thank you for the leaders that you've appointed. Help us live peaceable lives and make decisions the best they can. Have the people support what they can and contend what is necessary. Well, once again, as the prophet Isaiah said, through the unction of the Lord, come, let us reason together. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Day. Remain standing. We are honored to have the 4-Hers here. They're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is approval of minutes, meetings, and we have July 16th and August the 6th. One's a regular meeting, one's a pre-agenda meeting. Any corrections? Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Wayne. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Item number 5, approval of agenda as amended.
The item being a consent agenda item.
5,
Mr. Chairman.
yes.
All right. Motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Wayne. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Item 6 is presentations, and we have a presentation by Rebecca McLeod on the Burke County Safety Handbook.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Just wanted to say that we had submitted a county safety handbook that we would like your approval on that will go to each county employee so that they can recognize that you believe in safety for county employees. And they will have a measure for which they can also work with and have guidelines to go by. And you have that. We gave it to you at pre-agenda. You have any questions? Speak up.
Commissioners, you have a question? I have a couple.
Can't hear me?
I think it's page 52 on your book. Have you got that with you?
We do. The big one. Yes, sir.
And you've got a statement there that reviewed least annually. And my question is, if we don't name a date or a time or a period, it will become routine and get looked over. And, I was going to suggest, and that might be the wrong suggestion, but I was going to suggest that you do it within 30 days of the new budget year. But that may not be the best time, Rhonda, but my wish would be that you had a date when that was done, and within 30 days, I think you need to do it when you hire a new employee, that it needs to be done within 30 days. So,
We can put a date for them to get the safety handbook.
I'm just suggesting one.
No, that would be good.
And on page 56,
Get this on their orientation.
and the reason I can speak to this personally happened to me. You've got under basic safety rules, working under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs, and some prescription drugs, because some of them plainly tells you that you're not to operate equipment, drive, or whatever. I ran 3 red lights after a dentist gave me some medicine for an abscessed tooth. So I just think that needs to be addressed. And the other one was a question on page 58, in case of injury. It says first aid kit may be kept. Isn't that the law, that a first aid kit must be available at all times?
We had that discussion at our last safety meeting because some of the county agencies may not have put that into their budget. And we were discussing how we may could find funding or to find out if they could actually put the $20 in to get a first aid kit. They are in all the county trucks and cars and certain buildings, like they're at the landfill, they're at the health department, but some departments may not have it. So we were trying to figure out a way that they could put it into their budget so they could get one.
But I believe that's OSHA, isn't it?
Well,
Is this for OSHA?
The reason that some, according to a job description, those first aid kit changes. I got cited because I didn't have one in the mechanic shops with the had the eye stuff to clear the eyes. So I don't know, Mr. Manager, that if that's the law, I think we better come up with a little money and make sure everybody's got a first aid kit. I find that hard to believe. We actually have places that doesn't have first aid kit. Okay? That's all the questions or comments I had. Other commissioners have a question or comment?
Mr. Chairman, I do, please.
Okay.
Rebecca, on your general policy statement on page number 52, paragraph number 3, that last line that says if an area is considered to be, by the reader to be inconsistent, isn't that a little ambiguous if we're going to let the reader decide that if it's inconsistent with the OSHA standards? I know that's reaching far out, but it says that person should follow the OSHA standard. Maybe they don't know the OSHA standard, so.
And they may not know the OSHA standard, but that goes back to their supervisor to make sure that whenever they come in, they're trained for the job specific. And we can change that wording to be more specific.
Take a look at the wording,
We can
if you
take a
would,
look.
see if you can bring it down a little bit more narrow, so we can leave the interpretation of the reader out of it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let them know this has not been.
And this has not been sent to employees, so
We wanted-
we'll put the changes in.
Yeah.
I did
And-
want, I'm sorry, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
This will be given, well, a new employee, when they go through the initial orientation, they're going to go through the safety policies and procedures with them. And then you're talking about an annual review just to make sure everybody keeps this fresh in their mind.
Yeah,
We currently go over that now during orientation, but now we'll take it a step further and go over the safety handbook with them during orientation as well, and they'll get a copy of that and sign off on it when they receive that as well.
Thank you so much for the pamphlet. It's badly needed. If I'd have known we didn't have it, I took it for granted we had it. Some of us would probably have been making a little noise on it. Any other question or comment?
Are you okay with me going ahead with the PowerPoint here at this point?
Pardon?
Are you okay with me going forward with the PowerPoint,
Yes.
this presentation here? Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. This is pretty much an overview of the safety committee members. We meet once a month, the group does. I think it's every Thursday, second Thursday of the month. And Rebecca McLeod is our chairperson for this committee, and she has been the chair for quite some time. How many years, Rebecca? Okay, she doesn't want to say the years, but 13 years is how long she's been there. We have a great group here. This is a really dedicated group. Bradley Browning, EMS Captain, Jeff Clark, Health Department Admin Assistant 3, Sandy Ferris, DSS Admin Assistant 3, Keith Ferris, General Services Associate Engineer, Major Banks Heitzman from the Sheriff's Office. We've got myself, and then we have Mike Long, who's here with us tonight, the Fire Marshal. So this is a dedicated group of individuals, and you can tell they bring a wide array of experience and professionalism to the committee. So we're very pleased that we have this group to work together. The purpose of the Safety Committee that has been in effect for quite some time here in Burke County is to collaborate with employees and management to identify safety issues, to develop solutions, and to review incident reports, and actually help and assist with training needs that the departments may have. We do conduct annual site surveys and audits that we do the entire Burke County facilities here, all of them. That's convenience sites, that's pretty much everything. And what we've done recently, we've taken it a step further, and we've asked each department to conduct monthly safety inspections that they're doing themselves. So when we come in, they know what we're looking for and what issues that are maybe potential hazards. We also conduct change surveys. That's like if there's new buildings or new changes to equipment, and we work with departments to conduct job hazard analysis. So that's kind of a brief overview of what the committee does. One thing that we do on a monthly basis is we review accident and injury data, and I wanted to share a few things with you as far as that goes. I hope you guys can see this. This is a slide of our number of OSHA recordable injuries, and this is from fiscal year 2009 to 2012. And in 2009, we had 53 OSHA recordables. And I have a list here so folks know what that means. An OSHA recordable is an injury or illness that is considered recordable if it results in one or more of the following conditions. That would be death, days away from work, restricted work or transfer to another job, medical treatment beyond first aid, and loss of consciousness. So that's what determines what recordable injuries are. So we tracked these over the last 4 years, and we're happy to share with you guys we've got a downward trend going here. In 2010, we had 32. 2011, we had 28. And we ticked up one more in 2012, and you can believe we're on it this year trying to keep them down below that this year as well. The other good thing about this is if you look down below, excuse me, the local government average is 6.1 injuries or illnesses per 100 full-time workers. That equates to about 30.5 injuries for Burke County. So that means we're trending slightly below average for local governments. So that's a big plus for where we're trying to go here. This next slide is the one that we really wanted to show you. Well, sorry, it's the next one after that. We wanted to show you this one too. These are the top 3 causes of claims that we have here. This is over a 10-year period. The number 1 is overexertions, which means that would be pulling, pushing, lifting, any of that type of thing. And our EMS group has already worked to focus in on this. They have a medical physical abilities test for new hires coming in. They've ordered additional equipment. That's the power stretcher and the chairs, the stair chairs that they just had this recent fiscal budget year. So we're looking and focusing on those things as well. Slips and falls, that's our second cause, and then cuts, punctures, and scrapes. And every time one of these accidents occurs, we have an investigation the actual supervisor reviews, and then if there's a hazard, it's abated at that time. So, and then this is another thing that we're reviewing at the safety committee meetings to make sure that those hazards are taken care of. And that's also what we're doing when we're inspecting the facilities as well. We're looking for those trip hazards, those slip hazards, and those type things to make sure our people don't fall down and get hurt. I think this is the slide we were trying to show you here. We're really proud of this. The county manager was in our office, I think it's about 2 weeks ago, and or maybe a little longer than that. But our representative from our workers' comp group came in and gave us this, this data. And what it is this is the compensation claims paid for the last 4 years. So in fiscal year 2009-2010 for Burke County, we paid $82,813. In 2010-11, it was $204,632. In 2011-12, it went up to $265,848. And then this past year, we made a lot of good strides here. It came down to $58,279. So that's the biggie that we wanted to share with you guys, because it takes the whole group, it takes awareness with the employees, it takes the safety committee, it takes us all together to do this. So we wanted to share that with you guys as well. One thing I do want to point out in this slide is that claims can be reopened. So if there was a claim in 2010 and it reopens, that number could change in 2010. It could go up if there's additional medical expense for that year, but it goes back to the actual year that the claim happened. So if you ask this data for, again, maybe in a year or so, a claim might have reopened in 2010 or 2011 or 12, that would change those numbers. So I just want to make you guys aware of that as well.
That money versus how many claims, do you know?
What's that?
The money versus how many claims, do you know?
I don't have the total number of claims through 2012, 2013. I've got the recordable with me right here because this is everything. I can tell you right now, we're running, and this is incident only too. Incident only means we just get a report in. They had no medical treatment or anything like that, but we go ahead and file it with workers' comp just so there's a record of the event and so in case something happens down the road. I can tell you right now we're running about 53 total incidents right now this year, but that equates to about 21 recordable injuries. And the recordables are the ones that are quite serious or could be quite serious. But we'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any other question or comment from commissioners? This item is a presentation, no action required, but want to make sure that it gets in the minutes. Madam Clerk. Any other question?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to commend the Safety Committee for doing a great job. You'd like to see the numbers come down, it looks good. So I think that's attributable to your training efforts that's taking place for the both of you, and we do appreciate that.
Well, it's the whole group. Thank you.
Yes, and looking at the decline, this is a funny, Rhonda. Makes you wonder if we need the public safety book, doesn't it? But
I think we do.
yeah. Again, I agree that it's past due, and I'm tickled to death that it's where it is. I appreciate your work.
Thank you, guys.
Any other comment or question? Okay. Item 2 under presentation is the National 4-H Week. That's presented by John Davis.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us join you tonight. We have presented the board on behalf of Cooperative Extension and the 4-H program with our proclamation declaring National 4-H Week here in Burke County as October the 6th through the 12th. You have that in hand, and then we will be back to visit with you in the October meeting to do our annual 4-H program update with you as well.
Are you going to read the 4-H week?
We can.
I think it would be in order.
The proclamation reads, whereas 4-H youth across the nation are leading efforts to solve problems in their communities and make a difference for their futures. Whereas 4-H is the largest youth development organization in North Carolina and the largest in the nation with 6 million young people. Whereas 4-H in North Carolina claims over 240,000 youth members and 21,000 volunteers, while Burke County's 4-H program numbers more than 2,000 members and more than 400 volunteers. Whereas 4-H is part of the North Carolina Cooperative Extension System of North Carolina State University and NC State University, is a program where youth learn through opportunities that provide them hands-on experiences in 4-H missions, mandates of science, engineering, and technology, healthy living, and citizenship. Whereas 4-H has connected youth and their communities with the innovative research and resources from our nation's 106 land-grant universities and colleges for more than 102 years. Now, therefore, the chairman of the Burke County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim October the 6th through the 12th, 2013, as National 4-H Week in Burke County. We urge the people of this community to take advantage of the opportunity to become more aware of this special program that enhances our young people's interests in their futures as part of Burke County 4-H youth development, and to join us in recognizing the unique partnership between our county and the state university system.
Thank you. And yes, I'm sure I speak for the rest of them, we're tickled to death to name October the 6th through the 12th as National 4-H Week in Burke County. This item will take a motion to adopt the proclamation. Any other questions, comments? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt proclamation number 2013-07.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, 5-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, sir. We look forward to visiting with you in October.
All right. Item 7, scheduled public hearings. First one is from the Planning Department for ZMA 2013-02, and that will be presented by Scott Carpenter.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable board members. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. This is the first of 4 items that I have to present to you, and this first one is a rezoning request from Minnie Benfield. And Minnie Benfield would like to place another manufactured home on her property, and for the record, the PIN number for it is 176-467-9829. The request is to rezone the property from general business to residential 2. The property is also in the Scenic Overlay District, and this district would remain in place. Currently, we do not allow residential structures to be built in general business, and that was why she wanted to make this request before you tonight. For the site analysis, the majority of this site, it's a 9-acre parcel. It's mainly woodland. There is also a cleared area of road frontage with 1 manufactured home. The property lies within the WS4 water supply watershed. It has a small unnamed creek and borders the property line to the south. However, there is no FEMA floodplain on the property. Currently, there is an RV hooked up that will be removed prior to a new mobile home being placed on the site. As far as the surrounding land uses go, to the north is zoned R2 residential, the south is zoned R2 residential, east is R2 residential, and the land use is all single family. The only different zoning is to the west, which is general business, and it's vacant. For utilities, the site has access to electric power service. Public sewer service is available in the area, and it runs right in front of the property. However, it is often not practical to hook up to the existing system. This particular site already has 2 septic systems. One of them, the mobile home that has been sitting on the property for some time, utilizes, and the other one is to the west of it, and it is also approved for use. So unless there's a failure on the septic system, we wouldn't recommend connecting to the main sewer line that runs in front of the property at this time. This property is in conformity with the comprehensive plan. The 2005 Lake James Phase 2 Small Area Plan is the most recent comprehensive land use plan available for this portion of the county. The 2005 plan recommends using multiple land use principles and controls for this area in order to manage growth and development on and around Lake James and the Catawba River. Staff believes that the request to rezone the parcel to R2 residential is appropriate for this location for the following reasons. All adjoining parcels are either residential or vacant. The zoning the parcel to residential 2 would not create a spot zoning or interfere with the property values or rights of others in the area. The property was zoned residential 3 prior to the Lake James study. The property was rezoned to general business by the county and not the property owner. The property has at least one other residential septic system for a future dwelling, and the septic was also placed on the property prior to zoning. The statement of zoning consistency is the 1993 future land use map identifies PIN number 176-467-9829 as limited transition, and this designation is still appropriate for the area and in keeping with the intent of the designation. The property has a history of agriculture and residential usage, and all surrounding properties exhibit similar characteristics. Existing and proposed zoning categories are consistent with the rural character of the area. The Burke County Planning Board held a public hearing on June 27, 2013, and voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend that the Burke County Board of Commissioners consider approving ZMA 2013-02. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you gentlemen may have.
Thank you, Scott. First, we will need to open, this is a public hearing. We'd need to open the public hearing session. Anybody to speak to this issue? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. And commissioners, if you have questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman, Scott, that property has been in violation on and off for probably 5-6 years. What
Yes, sir.
guarantee do we have that that camper is going to be removed? I mean, that camper's been sitting there for over a year now. And do we have a guarantee from the property owner that that camper is going to
We have
go
a
away?
verbal guarantee from Minnie Benfield that it will be removed when the new unit comes on. She's had quite a time because we had gone through several scenarios trying to get her help, somebody to care for her, but the zoning was problematic. They even looked at creating an RV park there with 5 and 6 units just so that she could keep the RV, but we thought that that was not practical and that this was a better route to take because we don't see that any time in the near future this will be used for general business. There just doesn't seem to be any demand in the area at this current time.
So it's going to go away?
Yes, sir, it will go away.
Scott, if I might interrupt and ask one quick question. I think during our pre-agenda, you had said this was mainly a request because of a health issue, and this would be somebody living nearby to take care of an elderly person. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, a motion to approve the ordinance 21312, amending the Burke County zoning map as it relates to ZMA 213-02.
Thank you, Wayne. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, did that motion also include the zoning consistency statement?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, Planning Department Zone and Text ZTA 2013-02. And again, presented by Scott Carpenter.
I took delivery on my way out the door to print off 4 photos. The first 2 photos, you recall, are the decks that were approved that we allowed. So these are 2 examples of those. The other 2 photographs are things that we did not want to allow. So this one shows RV covers as well as some additions that have been made to RVs, such as room additions and that type of thing. On this photo, this has now been completely enclosed, and I think some sort of bar or something's across the front, and so those have been cited for violation. But I just brought those to refresh your memory on that, and I'll print it out to copy, so you don't have to bear with me. And then I'll share those with the audience. As you gentlemen are aware, this amendment has actually been going on for some time. It started back in May, and so it has been postponed. It has been broken up. The original request was for 4 different allowances in RV parks, and we had to have a series of meetings and negotiation and things like that in order to work out different details. Pardon me. So I apologize that this is coming to you in bits and pieces and that it wasn't able to come to you all at once for your consideration. But this zoning text amendment 2013-02 is a request from Chris Daly to add allowance for RV covers and add allowance for decks with covers. There was also originally a request to allow an allowance for storage buildings, but that request never made it from the planning board. They didn't want to make a recommendation on that particular request, and staff's position on that was to recommend denial on it. But you all still have the ability to entertain that original request if you would like, and I want to go ahead and read that before I get into the rest of the presentation. But originally, the wording from the applicant was that storage buildings not exceeding 48 square feet are permitted on individual site and must be made of plastic or Rubbermaid material. Staff was adamantly opposed to that. The planning board was split. They weren't sure where to go with that, but we felt that because of floodplains and other reasons of clutter and things that they probably should not be allowed, especially since RV parks are really for traveling short-term use, and 48 square feet is sort of a substantial building to have at undersized lots in the existing RV parks. So this item was originally brought before the planning board at their May 23rd, 2013 meeting. Land Daily, LLC, has requested a text amendment to Burke County zoning ordinance in order to add 4 new permitted uses within the RV park sites. This section of the zoning ordinance provides the standards for which a commercial group campground or RV park may be established. The board voted to move forward with the recommendations from staff to clarify RV site requirements, allow patio decks, and prohibit carports at RV parks and set forth the criteria for them. So those were done and those were already adopted. These initial recommendations were brought before you at your regular meeting. on July 16, 2013, and you all approved those by a vote of 5-0. A motion was made to revisit the allowance for covers over RVs and decks following a visit to Lake James Family Campground, as well as some of the other RV parks in the area by the planning board. So we did that, and we went out there. We looked at different scenarios, some of the things that were going on. We had a van from Greenway, and we came back and we met with the planning board. I'd like for you gentlemen to keep in mind certain things that when we make recommendations, or when somebody comes and asks you for a recommendation, that they do apply to all campgrounds, not just to Chris Daly. And that was one reason that there was a lot of discussion, because there's a whole lot of different types of campgrounds. But staff did have several concerns with the request, and I'd like to share those. That these new permitted uses requested by the applicant landowner will apply to all commercial campgrounds, RV parks within Burke County's planning jurisdiction, and not just the applicant's campground. The text amendment would permit structures which are currently not permitted in campgrounds and RV parks. The State Department of Insurance does not permit RVs or campers as residences. FEMA regulations state that RVs and campers located within a floodplain must be road ready at all times. RV covers and decks can make an RV unable to be quickly moved in the case of a flood, and we've seen that several times this year. RV covers and storage buildings are impervious surfaces which increase the flow of stormwater runoff. And currently there are no structures that I'm aware of in place to control runoff at most of the RV parks. When staying for long periods of time, tenants tend to want accommodations that are not customary to a traditional RV park. Currently, most campgrounds and RV parks in Burke County do not have septic or sewer systems designed to accommodate long-term stays. Many of the existing campgrounds and RV parks do not meet current zoning ordinance standards. There is not sufficient spacing of campsites to accommodate RV covers and decks without creating a potential fire hazard. And of course, that is in the grandfathered campgrounds that we're talking about that have only 5 feet of separation between some of the units, sometimes 6 or 7 feet. Some existing campgrounds have existing campsites that are within protected buffers. Many of the existing decks, porches, and covers were built without approvals and permits. Some have even enclosed their covers, and they have created room additions out of them. And this actually happens frequently. When I was in Montgomery County, we had a campground with 1,500 spaces, and we had to dedicate one full-time staff member who was a building inspector just to enforcing the regulations in the campground. And that was mainly because on the weekends people would come in and they'd build room additions, or they'd build decks and room additions, and they were taking up the entire lots. So it does consume quite a bit of time for staff on these types of things. The applicant wishes to keep the original wording that we had previously agreed to in section 1113.5, area and site requirements, A through F, which also included the new allowance for the patio decks. And if you recall, the patio decks have to be low to the ground, and we had a dimensional requirement on those. And we also banned the carports as not being allowed on RV sites. And those were the two big changes that were existing or that were in section 1113.5. The planning board met, and through a lot of negotiations with the applicant and amongst each other through discussion, they felt that they could make a recommendation for an RV cover, and a deck cover. And I'll share that request with you at this time. G, RV covers are permitted on individual sites and must be built to North Carolina State Building Code. Covers shall not be enclosed on any side, front or rear. Size of cover shall not exceed 12 feet in width and 45 feet in length. A 1-foot overhang is allowed. Roof pitch shall not exceed 412, and clearance from RV shall be 24 inches as measured from the bottom of ceiling joist to the roof of the RV. Materials shall be wood, either stained or natural. Roofs may be shingled, cedar, or colored steel. Colors must be earth tone. Red, yellow, blue, etc. is not allowed. Covers shall not be attached to the RV. RV parks wishing to utilize this provision must have an approved site plan and conditional use permit on file. That last sentence, RV parks wishing to utilize this provision must have an approved site plan and conditional use permit on file, was because of all the substandard older types of campgrounds. So that was added as a way to look at each campground and each site in the campground to see if they could actually feasibly put one of these and still meet the fire marshal's requirement of a minimum of 10-foot separation on the buildings. The second one, H, is decks with covers are permitted on individual sites and shall be built to North Carolina State Building Code. Size of deck cover shall not exceed 10 feet in width and 45 feet in length. A 1-foot overhang is allowed. The roof pitch is not to exceed 412. Decks with covers shall not be enclosed on any side, front or rear. Deck and cover shall not be attached to the RV. Roofs may be shingled cedar or colored steel. Colors must be earth tone. Red, yellow, blue, etc. is not allowed. Covers shall not be attached to the RV. RV parks wishing to utilize this provision must have an approved site plan and conditional use permit on file. And I is individual RV sites shall be limited to having either a covered deck or a covered RV. And now to the recommendation. The planning board staff and applicant have spent, a lot of time, many hours with discussions, often at odds for what should be allowed. There was some compromises made. Several members of the planning board felt very strongly that this type of thing should be permitted. A couple others thought that maybe it should not be permitted. So they came to an agreement that was the one that I just read to you. Staff cannot provide a favorable recommendation on this at this time because we have all the concerns that I mentioned earlier, and we're also seeing that the campsites at Horseshoe Bend have been enclosing their structures, so it's hard to police. And we also believe that after visiting many campgrounds and campsites, that the best looking campsites are the ones that allow just a patio or a deck that's basically on the ground or near the ground, and allow for an awning to be pulled out or a cover onto the deck. Those tend to be the cleanest, neatest looking ones that we've found in Burke County. So that concludes my presentation, gentlemen.
Thank you, Scott. This is a public hearing. We will open a public hearing. Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a number of speakers that have signed up.
Okay.
Mr. Wendell Sugg.
Before we begin those, let's make sure we understand that, so everybody gets a fair treatment and everybody can speak. Hold your comments to 3 minutes, please. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Wendell Sugg, and I'm a Burke County resident. Since the early 2000s, the Burke County government and a large number of agencies and groups including the Catawba Riverkeeper, Citizens to Save Lake James, Catawba River Foundation, Lake James Environmental Association, and several others banded together to negotiate a settlement of a lawsuit between Crescent Resources and Burke County. The outcome of that settlement was the Burke County Lake James Protection Ordinance, which since that time has helped protect and maintain the quality and pristine nature of Lake James, even through a period of extensive development of large residential subdivisions. By adopting these ordinances, the county was trying to ensure that Lake James would remain a clean drinking water resource for all downstream residents, as well as remain a beautiful recreation area for all to enjoy. In recent months, requests to change the zoning ordinances by Mr. Daly to fit the needs of his business have gone against the nature of the Lake James Protective Ordinance. It appears that we are allowing the unraveling of these ordinances one amendment at a time, so that in effect we will be moving backwards from the intent of the original ordinance. The current request to allow covers over RVs and/or decks would not be a benefit to all users of Lake James. In light of all the non-conforming ordinance violations that currently exist at Lake James Family Campground and other campgrounds, i.e. improper setbacks, removal of natural buffer zones, sediment runoff, and improper septic systems, the addition of covered RVs and/or decks would degrade the viewshed and increase sediment runoff due to the impervious nature of these structures. If all RV sites at Lake James Family Campground had the maximum cover size requested, it would cover nearly 2 acres combined. There are many existing sites at Lake James Family Campground that have covers over decks and RVs that were built in violation of these ordinances. It seems that by consideration of approval of this request, the county would be rewarding the violators of an existing ordinance. I request that the commissioners look at the big picture of how to maintain the quality of this lake for all to enjoy through enforcement of existing ordinances, and to carefully weigh out any future request to change these beneficial rules. Therefore, I respectfully request that you vote against any amendment to the zoning laws that allow permanent covers for RVs and decks in a seasonal campground.
Thank you,
Also,
Mr. Sugg.
Okay. Thank you.
April Leopard.
Nothing like the cat. Thank you for allowing me. My name's April Leopard, and my husband and I are homeowners in the Laurel Point subdivision, and we're directly across the cove from the campground. We've been there 19 years, and at the time, the Lake James Family Campground was leasing their property from Crescent, and then the campground was changed to a year-to-year lease. And they changed the zoning there from commercial to low-density conservation. And it was our understanding that that was going to be sold as a subdivision. And then, at a later date, Crescent sold the property to Mr. Daly, who has continued to run it as a campground. When we went to a public forum meeting on August the 14th, was the first time we had ever heard that the campground was going to expand by 50%, which means they're going to add, their proposal is to add 35 new additional RV sites right across our back cove. And this was a surprise to us. The proposal calls for 65. And we were saying that's a 50% increase, and we're looking at a low-density area. And as Mr. Sugg mentioned, the number one water pollution problem for the lake is silt. And silt comes from the runoff off the banks. And this has been a major study by the Lake James Environmental Association. Our shorelines are all stabilized. They all have riprap around them. All our subdivisions do. The campground does not. And their runoff has washed in, and we've had to dredge our cove because we can't access our community boat docks from the runoff. So again, with the covers, and as Wendell said, a 10 by 45, I'm a math teacher, and so I did the math too, is 87,750 square feet that can be covered. Not only does the runoff come, the velocity increases, which washes that silt into the water, but it affects the ground table, the water. So the aquifers are not filling up because that water is running off into the lake. There are also, you have pictures 1, 2, and 3, and I took those. They are pictures of how it looks, where the buffers, we all have a 50-foot buffer that we have to abide by, which is also part of the filter system for the storm water. And reading back through some of the minutes, that the area of the campground, according to the Planning Commission meetings, that the area has already been disturbed. And what does that mean? Is that out of compliance? And it says, the discussion says that it is allowed to be disturbed, but Mr. Daly can't continue to increase the disturbance in the new areas that aren't already disturbed. So I don't understand, and I'm disturbed, so I can't understand what this means. So I am, this Lake James does affect Burke County, and it's a very beautiful area. If you read tourism, Chamber of Commerce, it all talks about the jewel in Burke County. So we as property owners and taxpayers in Burke County ask that the commissioners vote no on this request to the ordinance to cover the campgrounds at Lake James. Thank you.
Thank
April,
you.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. A lot of people.
John Freeman?
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is John Freeman, and I live on Lake James and Lake Ridge Court. Lake James Campground is my neighbor. I came to ask you to vote against this amendment. My particular concern is the 65-foot buffer between the water and the campground, and I just don't think anything should be built in there at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Leon?
Thank you. My name is Ann Leon. My husband and I moved to the Laurel Point neighborhood in 2000. We chose to move to Lake James because it is one of the most beautiful places we've ever seen. I remember water skiing on the lake in the 60s, and I'm so grateful to be here. Around 2004, we supported the efforts of the Burke County and other groups to impose regulations to keep the water clean and the lake safe and scenic. I firmly believe that the lake should be accessible to everyone, but there are things happening at the Lake James campground now that disturb us. I oppose the Daly requested amendment that would allow him to build covers on RVs, and these are some of my concerns. The RV and deck covers restrict water from being filtered naturally by buffers such as trees, grass, and plants. Increased speed and channelizing of the storm water running off the roofs will lead to more silt in the coves, multiplying problems for fish, navigation, and public health. Part of the problem is that RVs and other structures have been built very close to the shoreline. As people have mentioned, we're concerned about the 65-foot setback, which promotes a more natural shoreline. Why shouldn't RVs and decks be moved back a distance to conform with the spirit and the intent of the Lake James overlay ordinances? Covers complicate the setback. Mr. Daly was initially cited for 45 zoning violations, building structures which were not allowed and cutting trees next to the water. We don't see corrections to these yet, no effort to clean up the shoreline or plant buffers. With these problems, why should he be rewarded and allowed to build covers that don't conform to the rules others living at the lake must follow? Adding deck and RV covers is not consistent to the seasonal nature of the campground and makes them permanent and thus harder to move in times of flooding or storms. We worry about the permanent old sewer barrels in place at the campground. No one knows exactly where they are located. Is it possible that construction and the installation of covers on the RVs and decks could disturb the ground and lead to potential environmental and health hazards? As a grandmother, I want my grandchildren to swim in and enjoy the lake free from pollution. As a former teacher, I want the water going downstream toward my students in Glen Alpine and Morganton to be clean for drinking and other uses. As a resident, I want to see people having fun at the lake and encourage folks to move here and come for a visit. Let's do the right thing. There are many in the audience who are opposed to this ordinance change and many who couldn't be here tonight who would like to have been. I'd like to ask those opposing the zoning change to please stand. Let's not go backward. Please don't weaken these ordinances. We have many more concerns about what is happening at the campground and what is proposed than we are discussing tonight. Please, let's deal with them before Mr. Daly spends more money in development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dorwin Kroom?
Good evening. My name is Darwin Kroom. With my wife Linda, I've lived and worked in Burke County for 33 years. My wife and I have owned a home in Holiday Shores at Lake James for 27 years. We've got a beautiful view of the lake and the South Mountains, and that view includes the Lake James Family Campground. We've always considered to be the campground a good neighbor. Most importantly, we've always considered that the best thing about the campground is that it allows so many people to enjoy the lake and live at the lake that might not otherwise be able to do so. So I was surprised when I learned that the campground is not in compliance with many zoning ordinance requirements for campgrounds and RV parks. I suspect that some of these violations have to do with the fact that the campground is actually a seasonal residential development and not a temporary RV park or campground for travelers or short-term vacationers. However, I also suspect that there are violations that could adversely affect the health and safety of the residents as well as the health and safety of the lake itself. Many of the other speakers have already talked about the problems with the permanent structures, RV covers, and deck covers. One thing people haven't talked about is that there are already many of those covers in place at the campground, and they're very close together. From where I can see from the lake, some of these are so close they're almost touching. So I think that the problem with the possibility of a rapidly spreading fire is certainly a consideration, and zoning should take account of the safety of the residents in the park. In addition to those specific problems, the proposed amendment raises some bigger questions. The amendment would allow for development of permanent structures in an already non-conforming property. Why would we want to allow construction that would even further make the property not what it's supposed to be? My understanding of Section 607 of the ordinance concerning non-conforming uses is that such uses are permitted to continue, but the intent is not to encourage their survival. Wouldn't approving the amendment, in essence, as Mr. Suggs said, reward the violator in spite of all the ordinance violations that have not been corrected? Another question is the issue of fairness. Most property owners and business owners in Burke County abide by applicable zoning rules. What message does it send to these taxpayers if you approve previously unpermitted development at the request of the owner of the property that already is non-compliant with many zoning standards and has many non-conforming structures? In conclusion, I ask that you not approve the proposed amendment or at least table the amendment pending further study. If you do choose to approve the amendment, I would urge you and county officials to carefully consider any further development and expansion of the Lake James Family Campground. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Ronald Woodby.
Thank you very much. Thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've had my house there for the last 17 years, and my property joins the Lake James Family Campground property on the west side. That is, while my home has a driveway from Benfield Landing Road down to it, it is still part of the Laurel Point subdivision. And when I get up in the morning and see the sun shining from the east directly into my house, I can see for miles down the lake. And on the right-hand side, when I see some of those campers and trailers and so forth, it depresses me a little bit. I've had a problem with people parking in my driveway, going down to use the community docks for the subdivision. I don't know, we've never really been able to find out exactly who some of them are, but they park in my driveway when no cars are in my driveway, and go swimming and sunning and so forth. my experience has been with, call them what you like, but they're all basically built the same, whether they're mobile homes, trailers, travel trailers, campers, whatever. And my experience has been, and I spent 20 years in banking and fooling with mobile homes. And my experience has been when a travel trailer, mobile home, or whatever reaches a point that it has to have some type of roof built over it, the trailer's getting in pretty bad disrepair. It means it's leaking somewhere probably. And once that starts happening, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do to the roof that's inexpensive. And so the best way to do it is to put some type of roof over the mobile home. And which means that the person owning the travel trailer is probably not going to do much repair to it, and it's going to further deteriorate, causing eyesores.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
I would like to ask you, if you would, to vote no in this case.
Thank you. Next, Madam Clerk.
That's all I have.
That's all you have? We will close the public hearing session and open the floor for discussion by county commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I know this is a very sensitive thing, and I've spent a lot of time out at the campground in the last few months, and while I'm not standing up for Mr. Daly, I do see a lot of improvements in the campground, and I know a lot of things out there he inherited. However, on this issue of the camper covers, for the world of me, I can't quite understand. I guess I could see that in a campground maybe of tremendous acreage where the campers aren't real close together, and you could have something like this. To be honest, I've never seen a campground with a lot of these covers. Now, somebody at Bear Creek tried to do this about, I guess, at the beginning of summer, and for some reason, Crescent or Duke had some say-so on that, and they stopped it right away. It just seems to me as you're going to build a structure like this, the next thing you're going to want to close in a place for your washer and dryer, you're going to want to do this and whatever. And it looks to me like you're building a house inside of a house. And the closeness in the campground there, I just think not only the water runoff, but the chance for a fire, I just don't think that campground is set up for that. I think maybe if you started over from scratch, like I said, and had tremendous acreage, you could do something like this. But in that small confined area, I just honestly don't see that. And like I think one of the speakers said, most all campers today either have an electric or a twist awning that you can leave your awning down. So why would you have the need for a roof structure made out of wood when you could you can have a nice awning, and we've already allowed low decks in there. So I just personally don't see this at this time. It looks to me from the pictures I see here from being out there, I just think that's going to lead into other things, and I think it's sort of, well, some people may think it's not unsightly. I think it's very unsightly, especially if a lot of people do this. And I don't think there's enough room there, and I would be concerned not only about the water quality and the runoff, but fire.
Thank you, Wayne. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I think there's some compelling arguments from the folks here tonight. Also, I've spent many hours up on the lake. You know, I'm kind of upset at the deterioration in the campground because it has over the years. I was hoping Mr. Daly could be able to come in and do some repairs that are there.
more compelling is our own department that has recommendations. We're asked to do something for one campground that's going to affect every campground in the county, which I don't really agree with. And building permanent structures over top of these trailers and RVs just almost makes it permanent. And I think Scott has definitely told us here the Department of Insurance doesn't permit RVs or campers as residences. And now, where I'm staying up at Black Bear too, I'm allowed to put a cement pad down, and I put my awning out, which was to me just fine. So as I drove around up there and I saw the red bank clays where the boats continue to pull up and there's continuing erosion up there, I think we've got some problems that may have to be addressed in the future. And I could go on about the impervious surfaces and the runoff there, but I think for these reasons, and I think they are compelling, I'm going to vote against the ordinance.
Any other comment?
Scott, how many violations, citations has this area received? And how many have been resolved, if any?
I don't have the exact number, but it's probably around 40-something originally.
Wow.
And I believe some of them have, I think it's gone down to 38 or so. Brock Hall, the Chief Code Enforcement Officer who's working on bringing these violations into compliance, is actually here tonight, and he may be able to answer with better numbers than I.
Brock, you want to address that? Would you like to?
I think we ended up with somewhere around the 39 violations total. 16 or 17 have been complied with up to this point as far as permits that could have been issued, and those permits and inspections have been done. We've got at least 6 properties we're working with now that need to have some structures removed, and we met with Mr. Daly on Monday to work forward towards that. And we've got probably about 4 other properties, I think, that have some of those storage type buildings that we mentioned earlier, the plastic ones that will have to be removed too.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, but and again, I'm not advocating for Mr. Daly, but a lot of these violations he inherited, I believe, right?
Yes, sir.
And I do see some effort to clean underground power and whatever. I have seen some improvement. I know one structure was full-time living with a stove inside that's you all forced them to tear down and whatever. So yes. I do see some improvement in the park, but a lot of this is inherited. And, you know, over the years, that campground's been there 50, 60 years, I guess.
And we've been very careful not to cite Mr. Daly on anything that was previous to his occupying the campground.
You know, people ask me every day about the sewer violations in there. You know, there's no way we can go in there and dig every bit of that property up. You know, there's just no way. But you know, we do know that there's some violations in there on that and whatever.
Any other question or comment? No, we closed the public hearing. I'm sorry. Scott, I have one comment, one question. I have a little trouble under the FEMA regulations of state RVs and campers that's located in the floodplain.
Yes, sir.
Got to be ready, road ready at all times.
Yes, sir.
Now, that road ready means that I don't get to come in and spend 3 hours taking something away so I can move that home.
It means they need to be expeditiously removed in case of rapidly rising water. I don't believe there's an exact number of minutes assigned to how long it takes, but generally we consider under an hour or so. Some of the RV parks that have built these structures, we were looking at them, and I believe Mr. Abley was with us, and you would have to remove 6 RVs to get one out because they built them side by side. There was no way to turn and get them out. Our concern with the allowing the structures, especially at the grandfathered sites with small lots, is that I don't know how you're going to turn them and make it feasible.
Well, you're familiar with the tail spin or the tail swing. I've got a 32-foot.
Oh, yes, sir.
32-foot gooseneck trailer, let alone a 40, 50-foot RV. And, you know, I don't believe you could build a deck within 6 foot and have enough clearance to pull a 40,
Right.
50 foot out. And we probably need to revisit that in a way that they understand those need to be. And the other thing is, I'm wondering why, if that's the way it's supposed to be, that even the insurance companies are insuring those RVs set up like that, because you can't pull them out in case.
Mr. Chairman, there is some controversy about that ordinance statewide, because there are park models that are logs that are in McDowell County, and we're in this county, that have permanent brick underneath the foundation or whatever. So it's not exactly like FEMA says or whatever. There is some leeway. I don't know how it is in the law, but if you go up to Bear Creek, there's a lot of structures there, the log structures that are on a foundation that you cannot really pull out. And I happen to own one of them.
Would we assume then those are not in the floodplain?
Right.
Okay.
In most cases, I would say.
Yeah. Any other question or comment? Thanks again for y'all coming and your comments, and I'm sorry I can't let the other gentleman speak, but the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to deny an ordinance number 2013-14, amending the Burke County zoning ordinance as it relates to ZTA 2013-02.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in the favor of the motion to deny, raise your right hand, please. Madam Clerk, 5-0. Moving to item 3 on public hearing, zoning text amendment ZTA 2013-04. That's a McKinney request amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This third item is a zoning text amendment 2013-04, and it is a citizen request, and it's to amend section 1216, pier provisions on Lake James. Background is that in May, staff was contacted by Mr. Jeff McKinney, who is here tonight, regarding options for a property owner to request a covered gazebo for an existing lot in South Point subdivision on Lake James. Mr. McKinney, he currently owns a waterfront lot and would like to have a covered gazebo at his location. Staff reviewed the current ordinance with Mr. McKinney, which prohibits new covered gazebos, and Mr. McKinney has petitioned the Board of County Commissioners to consider amending the zoning ordinance to allow for covered gazebos at South Point subdivision, and that's where this amendment would affect. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at the amendment. Staff has been out on Lake James. We've actually been to South Point, and we have counted every gazebo that is out there, and we have actually mapped them. Show you the results of our survey. That essentially the prohibitions on piers and covers and gazebos goes all the way back to 2002. And then in 2004, there were several things written that changed the zoning ordinance. And eventually the idea was to prohibit all covered decks and gazebos from Lake James. But as you all are aware, I believe two of you were probably sitting on the board at that time, the public was not happy with the restrictions that all of a sudden prior to 1998 to come in and to get permits to build a covered deck or a gazebo.
One or the other, right?
One or the other.
One or the other.
Okay, so those ran out, and the way it stands now is there's not a whole lot of properties that are allowed. But it turns out that the date was 1998. I have to look back to refresh my memory on the exact date. But in 1998, South Point Phase 1 was the only one in South Point that fell under the date that allowed for the covered gazebos. Their homeowners association does not allow for covered decks, so that was not a factor. So when you all opened up the window for a year, it turns out that 107, and you have to quite go down, but 107 of 100 and I believe 67 lots have the gazebos, and most of those have piers as well. And the gazebos, if you look at them from the air, you can't even really see them. What you're seeing is actually piers, but they blend into the shoreline and they're hard to see.
Are the red dots gazebos?
The red dots are the ones that do have the gazebos. And you all can examine this more closely if you wish. But we were out there, we were out on the sheriff's boat, and we did count and photograph every gazebo and every lot out there to identify this. The reason that staff supports the requested amendment is because a preliminary plat was filed several months before the restriction went into place, and that preliminary plat was actually for 5 phases of South Point, not just phase 1 that was allowed to build the gazebos. So some of the residents out there, I want to protect Lake James as much as anybody else. And at Lake James, it's a complex situation, as you fine gentlemen are well aware. But when I looked at this, and when you looked at this from the water, most of these are in inlets, they're set back. If the amendment is approved, it would allow for the building of maybe 60 additional structures in the South Point subdivision. So the question is, does staff think that gazebos should be allowed everywhere on Lake James and covered docks? And the answer is we do not. We tried to look at each thing individually, and we felt that this was a fair and a reasonable request based on the history of that particular area. The actual areas on Lake James that can be built are very few, and like Dry Creek, it has no covered decks or piers that I can see or remember seeing. And so the new subdivisions, there's only 2 areas that Crescent has that can be built, 3 actually, and I don't believe they would be allowed there as well. So the request specifically is the applicant requests, Mr. McKinney has requested a text amendment to section 1216 of the Burke County zoning ordinance in order to allow gazebos to parcels of land that were preliminary platted on or before October 28, 1997. This section of the zoning ordinance provides the standards for which a gazebo may be constructed. Section 1216, pier provisions on Lake James, parcels of land that were platted and were of record after October 28, 1997. The applicant wishes to amend this one statement of the ordinance to read, parcels of land for which a preliminary plat was approved on or before October 28, 1997. The Planning Board met and conducted a public hearing on June 27, 2013, and voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend that the Burke County Board of Commissioners consider approving zoning text amendment 2013-04.
Thank you, Scott. We will now open for the public hearing part of this.
Mr. McKinney?
Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, my name is Jeff McKinney, and I am a full-time resident of Burke County, residing in South Point. On behalf of my co-applicant, George Redder, we want to thank you for your consideration of this proposed amendment to the Burke County zoning ordinance. We ask for your approval tonight based on the following points that were outlined in the Planning Director's summary of our request. First, as evidenced in the comprehensive preliminary plat for South Point that was developed in August 1997, encompassing all 5 phases of the development, there was clearly intent to develop and create an attractive, uniform waterfront community on Lake James that would be governed by a common set of restrictions and covenants. Unfortunately, the arbitrary restriction imposed by the current ordinance directly conflicts with the original intent of uniformity throughout the development and has created an unreasonable and discriminatory situation for current and future property owners. Secondly, we firmly believe that the construction of a limited number of additional gazebos in South Point would have no material impact on the pristine environment and the high quality of life at Lake James, which are in fact the very attributes that attracted us to Burke County and the lake in the first place. And finally, the proposed change to the ordinance would have no impact on the viewshed, given the location of the proposed gazebos on the fixed pier portion of the dock immediately adjacent to the shoreline, as is the case with all of the existing gazebos in South Point. We note and appreciate that the proposed amendment has the full support of the South Point Dry Creek Owners Association, county staff, and the Burke County Planning Board. So in closing, we trust you will agree this amendment is a fair and reasonable change that will only serve to enhance overall property values, make Burke County and Lake James an even more attractive place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all.
Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing session since no one else has signed up to speak, and we'll have discussion from the county commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, Scott, how many potential gazebos, you just said it a while ago, was it 90-some or?
The most that could be built would be about 65. Based on the layout of lots and things, it would probably be more like 50.
And if they have, there's no covered docks out there anyway, so this strictly would be either, I mean, just gazebo.
Just gazebos, yes, sir.
Gazebo, all right.
Scott, Mr. Chairman, Scott, if you
Yes.
would, give me the short version of how he fell through the cracks and didn't get a gazebo.
He bought property after you all had opened up a window, not you personally, but after the Board of Commissioners opened up the window for everybody to come in and get the permits. He purchased the property after that was closed.
Okay, if we do this, this only affects South Point, is that correct?
Only South Point, yes, sir.
And we had some changes even with boat docks after the fact at one time, a couple years ago, so it's not something new.
Any other question, comment? Scott, I was one of those that was on the board when this took place, and I argued that if it was on the deed, if you bought a deed with the stipulation that allowed that we were interfering with the contract. But we got a good bit of satisfaction, Wayne, I believe, when we gave everybody a year, but I understand that some people did not sign up and now wants to build. I guess my biggest question about the entire thing is, do we open up worms forever for other developments along Lake James with that same question?
I can't answer to the future of who may petition you, but I know that we will look at each one individually and look to see if it's fair. And the way that it is, East Lake has either or, dock or gazebo. South Point has only gazebos. Dry Creek has none. And so I don't believe that future requests would probably be honored as we try to maintain an environment of natural beauty out there at Lake James. But I don't believe this particular request affects any of that beauty in any way.
We did an excellent job with the presentation and showing some examples. Is it fair to ask, is it a fair question? If it's not, just don't answer the question. What would be the average cost for a gazebo?
I really don't know. They design them in so many different ways, and because they do them natural and to blend in, the costs are higher than would normally, be done. But I just don't know the answer, sir.
Do you have an idea how many residents would apply? You said around 65 could.
Maximum.
Maximum. How many of
50
those
is probably the most that would ever be able to come in and do it based on the layout of their lots and stuff.
Do you expect 50% participation or higher?
Probably 50%, maybe higher. I don't know. The people who live in South Point may know better through their homeowners association and meetings that they've had, but I do know that the homeowners association is in support of this request.
Thank you. Any other question or comment?
Mr. Chairman, because of the homeowner's request, I'll make the motion that we do grant this request.
Okay.
I don't know if there was anything else that I was looking for there.
2013-13
All right.
is the ordinance.
All right, all right.
All right. Any other question or comment? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, you just well stay where you are, right? Item 4, zoning map amendment, ZMA 2013-03.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have some regretful news on this application. For the first time since I've been doing these for 20 years, the applicant has passed away today, Jerry McMahon. But his representative is here, and he assures me that Jerry's wife would like to continue with this request because this is in her best interest into the future. So God bless all of you all and the family, and I'm sorry for your loss. This is a request, zoning map amendment 2013-03. This zoning map amendment request is to rezone 3 parcels of land located off of North Carolina 18 South, and it's identified by PIN numbers 2711999-847, PIN number 2722002-386, and 2722006-018. The request is to rezone the property from residential 3 to rural mixed use. The parcels are not located in any overlay districts. An analysis of the site indicates that the properties are a mix of commercial and residential uses. Surrounding zoning is residential 3 with both general business and RMU zoning within 1/4 mile of this property. 2 other properties are developed and do have structures on them. The 3rd parcel is a 2.3-acre lot, and it's wooded and it's undeveloped. The largest parcel is 24.78 acres and has a mix of commercial and residential structures on it. The commercial structure was constructed in 1995 prior to countywide zoning, and it has continuously been in use until just recently as a commercial structure. There are no known streams or FEMA designated floodplains on the 3 parcels. The parcels are not located within a water supply watershed. I did provide you some pictures of the commercial buildings, and there's one that's existing that's, I believe, a residential unit that's back in the woods. You can't really see it from the road. Conformity with the comprehensive plan. The 1993 Burke County Comprehensive Plan is the most recent land use plan available for this portion of the county. One of the goals of the plan was to promote quality industrial and commercial development. Stated objectives to achieving this goal were that direct commercial development throughout Burke County in ways are responsive to neighborhood and community commercial needs, continue to encourage new economic development by developing the most appropriate land and establishing development standards to promote high-quality development. The 1993 Comprehensive Plan depicts the area in which the subject parcels are located as developed. The plan states that commercial development is targeted to areas of existing commercial development along Interstate 40, North Carolina 181, North Carolina 18, as well as US 64. The recommendation is for residential single-family development, but also mentions that smaller scale commercial uses can also be provided concentrations of residential uses to serve the convenience and needs of the residents. Although the adjacent land uses are not currently the same as the requested RMU, it is not considered spot zoning because it does bring in 3 parcels and there's a large acreage associated with that. The request for RMU may be appropriate for this location for the following reasons. The 1993 Comprehensive Land Use Plan recognizes that small-scale, high-quality development can be appropriate and compatible with residential areas. The property has an existing commercial structure which was constructed prior to adoption of the zoning ordinance. There have been multiple commercial uses of the structure and land prior to adoption of the zoning ordinance. Other commercial uses exist in the immediate area. The proposed zoning RMU allows a mixture of land uses, including residential uses, as the comprehensive land use recommends. As for the statement of zoning consistency, it reads, the 1993 future land use map identifies these properties as developed, and this designation is still appropriate for the area and in keeping with the intent of the designation. The area has a history of commercial and residential usage, and all surrounding properties exhibit similar characteristics. Existing and proposed zoning categories are consistent with accepted zoning standards and the urbanizing character of the area. There is no physical budgetary effect by this request being granted, and staff does recommend that the Board of County Commissioners consider approving ZMA 2013. The Planning Board did meet on July 25th, 2013, and they voted unanimously, 5-0, to also recommend to you to approve ZMA 2013-03.
Thank you, Scott. The chair will now open the session for public hearing on this item. Anyone here to speak on this item?
I have no cards.
Okay. We will close the public hearing session and open it for comments from commissioners or questions.
Could you briefly tell us what the process would be for a conditional use if this is changed and someone wanted to use
it for something other than the small businesses that it's been utilized for? They would have to come in and they would get a zoning permit, and they would also have to do a site plan approval for a commercial type of structure or a small industrial thing or farmer's market, whatever it is. So we'd have to go to the table of uses, and based on those uses, we would do a site plan review, essentially. One thing to keep in mind is that in the RMU district, we went to countywide zoning.
So where is the line in the sand when a person would have to come to you for a permission? Or
well, they would have to
happen out there without someone coming in, I guess is what.
Well, and you know as well as I do that sometimes people fall through the cracks and they do things and start up things without coming to us. But if they do come to us, it would start with a zoning request. And we would see if that use is allowed. And then certain uses will require site plan approval or review. Some may be conditional use approval. So we won't know until they come in and do a request.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, Scott, on the application, it actually says that they want to use it for small commercial uses. Is there any indication of what that is, or are you at liberty to say?
I don't know, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else? Johnny asked my question. My question was, does the owner have someone willing to rent or wanting to rent the building?
I believe they did have somebody wanting to rent it, and that's how this rezoning request came about. I think I've pointed out to you fine gentlemen several times that one thing that happens when you go with countywide zoning is there's often people left behind with improper zoning that could put them out of business if a use continues or changes over. And that's really what happened here. Somebody left, and then when they came in to with a new business, they were denied.
It's a nice little, not too little. As a matter of fact, the picture doesn't do it justice. That building is bigger than it looks.
Yes, sir.
So, any other question or comment? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve ordinance number 2013-15, amending the Burke County zoning map as it relates to ZMA 2013-03, and if my motion is approved, that we adopt statement of zoning consistency that states the 1993 future land use map identifies these properties as developed, and this designation is still appropriate for the area in keeping with the intent of the designation. The area has a history of commercial and residential usage, and all surrounding properties exhibit similar characteristics. Existing and proposed zoning categories are consistent with accepted zoning standards and the urbanizing character of the area.
Thank you, Johnny. You've heard the motion. Any other question or comment? Your approval of the motion, please raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Scott. Item 8 is informal public comments. Each speaker has 3 minutes. The gentleman who's wanting to speak could speak at this time. Did he leave? Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
I have.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Mr. Schoberly?
Members of the board, a couple years ago during my son's spring break, we took a trip to Virginia. While most people go to Charlottesville to see Monticello and then maybe go to Orange as a side trip to see Montpelier, my interest was the opposite. For you see, Montpelier, about 20 miles north of Monticello, is the home of James Madison, father of the Constitution, drafter of the Bill of Rights, and author of 26 of the Federalist Papers. As you stand in that little study above the main entrance to Montpelier, if you're quiet, you can almost hear the echoes of a quill pen scratching on parchment as Madison drafted the Virginia plan that serves as the basis of the Constitution, the great masterpiece of checks and balances and limited government. I tell you this because today is Constitution Day, the 226th anniversary of the ratification of that unique document. Unfortunately, during my 26 years working for Burke County, I saw very little understanding of the Madisonian principles of limited government, checks and balances, and popular sovereignty among your employees, especially among your administrators and supervisors. Rather than take the appropriate default position that local government can do only that which has been expressly authorized by statute to do, you have administrators and supervisors who act first and ask questions later. Obviously, this attitude has serious civil liability ramifications for the county and those administrators and supervisors personally, and it is increasingly disgraceful that it exists in the native and home county of one of the 20th century's great constitutional scholars and defenders. As I see this as a teachable moment, I have provided each of you with a pocket copy of our founding documents. I have provided Ms. Honeycutt with copies for your administrators and supervisors. I previously provided copies to the Department of Social Services because if any of your departments is in need of an emergency civics intervention, it's that one. If you need more copies, I will provide them. As with any teachable moment, it requires a willing student. I am just not assured that there are many of those in your employ. as a case I'm currently involved in will attest. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the booklet, sir. Thank you.
Mr.
Madam
Orson?
My name is Gresham Orison, and I moved here 40 years ago. And one of the things that attracted me to the Burke County and to this community is the clean water and the clean lake that we've got. I really applaud the work that Judy Francis did in preserving the quality around the lake and preserving the shoreline. I think you've got a great development with Scott over there. I think he's doing an excellent job for you. But recently, a couple of things have come up that I think you need to know about. Number one is a boat caught fire out there, and there's no county ordinance to require the removal of a sunken boat at Lake James. And it's got antifreeze in it. It was an inboard, outboard. It's got oil. It's got gas. And it's a hazard if anybody happens to get caught in the structure. And so I understand that it has finally been removed, but if you pass an ordinance that if you sink a boat, you got to remove it, the insurance company will pay for pulling it out if they've got liability insurance, and I think it'd be a relatively simple thing to put in. The next thing that I want to talk about in water quality is I've worked with Foothills Conservancy to try and preserve the quality of the water coming in on the Catawba River. And they have protected the headwaters. Well, downstream from that, we need to be very careful about what's dumped into that lake. And I became very concerned when I understood that the sewage treatment plant for the campground was a 55-gallon barrel perforated with the sewage running into it and being as close as 10 feet to the water. And I think that's a big problem, and I don't think that that should happen with all the hard work that people have put in to preserve the quality of the lake. As a physician, I'm well aware of a lot of the diseases that can be transmitted with fecal bacteria. And in addition to that, we have another problem. I own a farm on Patty's Creek. For years, we used to go up there and swim, and the problem now is that it's got blue-green algae. Anybody that knows anything about water knows that if you got blue-green algae, you've got feces in it. That's why it grows. And so we have now a situation where Patty's Creek used to be drinkable and swimmable, but now it's pouring right into your lake. And I think you need to look into the headwaters and preserving the water feeds for Lake James. And I think hopefully Scott can work with us on that, but I think that the last thing that I want to make the point is that we are reactivating Lake James trails. And we're probably going to need your help in getting the authorization and the request for taxes. There's a certain percentage of gasoline tax available for free. All you have to do is apply for it, and it'll fund the trails around the lake. And so I'll be back.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 9, the consent agenda, and we'll recognize our county manager, Brian Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have 18 items on your consent agenda. The first is clerk acceptance of CDBG progress reports submitted by Western Piedmont Council of Government. Item 2, clerk reappointment and removal, Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee. Item 3, clerk approval of new bylaws for JCPC and Partners Behavioral Mental Health. Item 4 is clerk reappointment to Jury Commission. Item 5 is clerk appointment and reappointment to Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee pending receipt of application from Mr. Collins. Was it Mr. Collins or
Yes.
Ms. Collins? I'm sorry. Item 6 is clerk reappointment and removal to Region E Development Corporation. Item 7, clerk appointment to the Burke County Parks and Recreation Commission. Item 8, clerk removal from Burke County Planning Board. Item 9, county manager agreement related to 911 transition employees. Item 10, county manager memorandum of agreement with Reason Incorporated, reduce euthanasia and spay or neuter. Item 11 is DSS position reclassification. Item 12, general services, approval of additional renovation work on the historic courthouse, $2,000. Item 13, health department, Charles George Veterans Affairs Medical Center spacing or space sharing with public health for clinic services for veterans. Item 14, human resources, pay grade change request. Item 15, JCPC, appointment of members to the JCPC. Item 16, tax office, EMS collections, report for July 2013. Item 17, tax office, release and refund report for July 2013. And item 18, tax office, tax collections report for July of 2013. That concludes your consent agenda.
Thank you, County Manager. Any question or comment? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Wayne. All those in favor, will you raise your right hand? 5-0, Madam Clerk. Moving to item 10, items for decision. This will be brought to us by Madam Clerk, Kay Honeycutt, BDI Burke Development Incorporated. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The county appoints 4 members to the BDI Board of Directors. Currently, there is a vacant position on this board. Applications from Lou Hoffman and Thomas Starnes are on file for your consideration. This appointment would be to complete an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2015.
Question or comment from county commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Mr. Starnes as that member, please.
All right. Have a nomination for Thomas Starnes. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Thomas M. Starnes to the BDI Board of Directors to complete an unexpired term ended June 30th, please raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk. Item 2 under decision, declaration of abandoned manufactured homes in violation of Section 901 of the Burke County Environmental Compliance Ordinance. That'll be brought to us by Brock Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These 2 mobile homes are at 4001 Hideaway Hill. The property owner is the Carter Land Company. Both mobile homes are vacant. One of them is quite severely deteriorated. It's missing some siding, some walls, windows, doors, etc. The other mobile home is still intact, but it is missing some doors. It's been exposed to the weather. It's got some work that needs to be done on the interior before it could be lived in. We haven't received any contact from the property owner. It doesn't appear that he's making any effort to get rid of them. As you know, if you declare these mobile homes abandoned, he will have 90 days to get rid of them. At that point, we will we will seek a contractor to have them removed in accordance with Article 9 of the Environmental Compliance Ordinance. That ordinance is a grant through the state, so the money's coming from the state to have those mobile homes removed. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Anyone here to speak to this matter? Open for hearing on this matter? No one? We'll close that session, hearing session, and discussion by commissioners, please. Any comment? Brock, let me ask you one. You said one was intact.
It is intact
Will it be able to
structural.
be pulled out without destroying?
Probably. It could. If the program won't allow that, though, we have to deconstruct it on site if we put it through the program.
Okay. Any other question or comment?
Will it be less expensive to pull it out as a whole, or, which I guess the state will pay if we?
The state, the state won't pay us if we don't demolish it. And honestly, I think it'd be cheaper to tear it down than for the amount of renovations that would have to go into it. I mean, it's still intact, but you still got some stuff on the interior that needs to be done.
It is not in rentable condition, though. Is that correct?
Doesn't appear to me.
Any other question or comment? Chair will entertain a motion.
Chair, I move to declare the manufactured homes located at 4001 Hideaway Hill owned by the Carter Land Company as abandoned in accordance with Section 900 of the Burke County Environmental Compliance Ordinance, and authorize staff to remove the mobile homes following the 90-day waiting period and place a lien on the property if needed.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Item 11, reports and comments, and we'll start with Madam Clerk tonight.
None for me, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. None.
Jeff? No. Johnny?
Nope.
I just want to make one comment. We had a ribbon cut in for one of our commissioners who has passed on, Gene Huffman, for the Convenience Center. And it was a pleasure and an honor to be there to represent this board. It was an honor to represent and honor Gene Huffman as we cut the ribbon for that incident and that event. So, and it was an excellent event. Wished all of you could have been there. But through that event, as I think Johnny and I both claimed, the impact of this gentleman, which was a true gentleman, will be felt for years upon years. Ooh, we have a picture. Okay. All right. I may have stole somebody's show, so I will shut up for the moment. Wayne?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We through the magic of photography, we're going to allow you to have at least some of the experience of the ribbon cutting ceremony for former Commissioner Gene Huffman at the Memorial Convenience Site for him. We've just got a variety of pictures there with captions, for you can take a look at that.
Everybody's gray-headed.
Must be water.
Well, now Mr.
Everybody been
Huffman, the son doesn't look quite that gray-headed. There's a family photograph, the Huffman family. They were there for the sign unveiling, as well as the ribbon cutting. And this will be incorporated into what is actually broadcast on our cable news of our meetings, so the folks that are watching TV will be able to see this. All righty, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. J.R.?
Since our last meeting of the board, we supervised an election in the Drexel Elementary School District. I think I've informed you all of that by email, but since we're at a public forum, let me just state that the Drexel, there were two organizations within the Drexel Elementary District. You commissioners proposed how we could reduce that to one, asked the Drexel Boosters Club if they were interested in being that one under the circumstances that the commissioners had set forth. They declined. The Drexel Charger Athletic Organization accepted those terms and agreed to have a community-wide vote to determine its leadership. That vote was held on August 24th, 2013 from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. A total of 86 persons from the Drexel Elementary District voted, and the officers that were elected were Fred Cook for president, Matt Johnson for vice president, Cheryl Owens for secretary, and Andrea Houston for treasurer. And Gary Crego and his staff, and Keith Ferris and his staff, and our sheriff's deputies did a real good job in making sure this was a smooth event. And of course, one other thing I'd like to say, since we're in a public forum, is that we were informed tonight by Scott Carpenter of the death of Jerry McMahon. Jerry was a longtime commissioner here in Burke County, and I'd ask everyone to be in thoughts and prayers for his family. And
Thank you. Next on the agenda is vacancy announcements, and we'll recognize Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We currently have the following open positions on these boards and committees: the Hickory Regional Planning Commission, the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, Council on Aging, Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, Board of Equalization and Review, the Region E Development Corporation, the Burke County Planning Board, and the Morganton Board of Adjustment for the ETJ. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We do have a need to go in closed session as authorized by NCGS 143-318.11A 3, 4, and 6. Do I have a motion that we adjourn? After 5 minutes recess, we will convene in closed session.